Kia ora koutou katoa. Good afternoon. First, the week ahead. Tomorrow I am in Wellington and will attend question time. On Wednesday I will be in Auckland supporting the vaccination efforts there, meeting with business representatives and local government. The later part of this week I will chair APEC, which includes a busy agenda despite being held virtually this year. On Wednesday night I will participate in the APEC Youth Dialogue, Voices of the Future. On Thursday, I'll speak at and attend the APEC CEO Summit and participate in a panel discussion with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Microsoft President Brad Smith. And then on Friday evening and into early Saturday morning, I will chair the annual APEC Leaders Retreat. Today, Cabinet met to discuss alert level settings in Auckland and Northland. Last week, Cabinet made an in-principle decision to ease restrictions in Auckland to what has been termed Alert Level 3, that's Step 2. And today, Cabinet, on the advice of the Director General of Health, has confirmed that decision to ease into that new set of settings at 11:50 p.m. tomorrow night. This will bring Auckland and the Waikato into alignment. At Step 2, retail businesses and malls open. However, just to be clear, event facilities like movie theatres and gyms will remain closed for now. Face coverings, record keeping and physical distancing, of course, are required. The numbers at outdoor gatherings increase from 10 to 25 people, and the 2-household restriction is removed. This means groups of family, friends and neighbours can get together for barbecues and gatherings while still keeping these outdoors. It also means outdoor classes like yoga and CrossFit can increase to 25 as well. Public facilities like libraries, museums and zoos can reopen at this step, of course with face coverings, record keeping and physical distancing required in the same way as for retail. The reasons for this decision today capture the transition phase we are in as we continue to minimise the impact of COVID-19 and work to protect people from it. As you can see, we have increasingly high vaccination rates in Auckland, and that is a substantial part of our consideration now. Auckland hit 90% first dose and 80% second dose over the weekend, and is now a matter of weeks away from 90% double dose. And so while we're getting those rates higher still, we are easing into our reopening. The restrictions we've eased to date, we've done so because we know they are the safest ones. For example, evidence shows picnics outside have not led to an uptick in cases. And from barbecues, we have evidence of just one case. Indoor gatherings, which are not permitted now, nor when we move to Step 2, continue to be a major driver of spread. So keeping it outdoors reduces the risk and helps keep cases under control. We've also not seen significant cases in workplaces at the last set of restriction changes that we made, so opening retail with the appropriate public health measures in place should also be low risk. In making this decision, we have also considered the ongoing mental and emotional strain of lockdown on Aucklanders and the impact on businesses. We do hope that this easing will relieve some of the pressure, and I again thank Aucklanders for the work that you're doing to keep the rest of the country safe. Cabinet will next make alert level decisions on Monday the 15th of November when the Waikato is due to be considered. But today I can also tell you that based on current projections, Auckland is on track to make 90% double vaccinated this month. Cabinet has a check-in on November the 29th. And based on Cabinet's discussion today, there is a strong expectation that Auckland will move into the COVID-19 protection framework following this November 29 check-in. This is based on all 3 DHBs having reached 90% first doses already, and the 29th of November representing 21 days or 3 weeks following the first dose milestone, allowing time for that 90% to be fully vaccinated. Moving to the new framework at that time will mean certainty for Auckland. It will mean all businesses can be open and operate. It means we will manage cases as safely as possible, but differently. Our projections have already shown us that cases will grow, but this is not the only consideration. We now also look to hospitalisations and ICU as a key consideration for the safety of New Zealanders. And those rates are within expectation, with ICU use being lower at this point. In this lockdown, though, Delta has tested us like never before. But we are very close to getting back to doing the things we love, like seeing friends or family, or taking the kids to the movies. Finally, on Northland, Dr. Bloomfield has recommended to Cabinet today that the far north of Northland move back to level 2. Cabinet has agreed, and this can occur on 11:59 p.m. Thursday, the 11th of November. We've seen very high testing rates in the far north, tripling in the last 7 days, and 10 to 15% of the population has been tested. We do have additional cases today, but the view and advice of the Director General is that these could be managed through ongoing contact tracing and testing. Cabinet made the decision of a few days extension of alert level to give additional time for this to occur. And one last message before I finish with a quick update on boosters. 6 DHBs have now hit 90% the first dose mask. That's Auckland, Waitemata, Counties Manukau, Capital and Coast, Canterbury and Southern. Nationally, there are only 33,316 doses required across the remaining 14 DHBs to get them all up to 90%. We have the capacity and vaccines to do all of those tomorrow. 2021 has been a long year, but we are now in a sprint to make summer the break it can and needs to be. So I encourage again anyone across those DHBs who have not had their first dose to support their local communities by doing so. We'll finish on an announcement on boosters. MedSafe has today approved a booster dose of the Pfizer vaccine, and this is being gazetted as at 3:30 p.m. today. The approval is for administration of the booster for people aged 18 and older and at least 6 months following the second dose. MedSafe's approval is the first step in the process. You'll remember that the next step is for the COVID-19 Technical Advisory Group and the Ministry of Health to provide advice to ministers to inform the use of booster doses, including the age limits and the interval between the second dose and a booster dose. We understand the health and border workforce are particularly concerned about whether or not they'll need a booster dose, and so we're obviously working towards a plan to provide that reassurance as soon as possible. Rest assured, though, we have the doses and the vaccinators to roll out as soon as our experts give us their final advice, which we don't believe will be too far away. We're now happy to take questions.
Minister, will you bring forward that November the 29th check-in if Auckland hits double dose 90% sooner?
If they meet that 90% double dose across each of those DHBs, then they will move into the new framework. The check-in was a pragmatic one. It gives us an opportunity that if we are close to that 90%, that we're able to make a pragmatic decision around the move. I can tell you from Cabinet's discussion today, there's every expectation that at that 29 November we'll be confirming the move of those DHBs in Auckland.
So the border will open to double vaxxed Aucklanders at that point?
The border decision is a separate one, but we'll be looking to confirm the date that the border will alter next week.
Why can't you say that now? Because you kind of have a sense of what's going to happen. So
because it's not just about, obviously for the Auckland border, it's not just about Auckland. It's about the status of the rest of the country and their vaccinations, which is why it's more than just whether or not Auckland has moved into its new framework. We want that to happen regardless of what is happening in the rest of the country.
So
Auckland has worked so hard to get their vaccination rates high. They deserve to be able to move as soon as they hit those targets, regardless of what's happening in the rest of the country.
So is that your commitment that even if the rest of the country isn't at 90%, Aucklanders will be able to leave?
Oh, we've already given that. I've already said that for the summer break and for Christmas, Aucklanders will be able to leave Auckland, regardless of what is happening around the rest of the country. We've already given that commitment. We cannot say that Auckland needs to stay within Auckland at a time of year where traditionally, of course, they've been reunited with families and friends. What we need to do, of course, is put in place the protections that we need to give additional reassurance to the rest of the country around that movement, and that's what we're working on. Thank you, Jessica. Then I'll go Jane, then Barry.
It seems what Aucklanders are craving at the moment is certainty. So
Understood.
if the 29th of November is the check-in, that wouldn't be the date that instantly things would change? Or?
As it so happens, the 29th actually represents essentially the roughly 3 weeks from when Auckland will have had the opportunity for those first doses to turn into second doses. So that's why Cabinet has a very strong expectation that at that check-in, that we'll likely see the movement of Auckland into that new framework.
So what happens then after the check-in?
So, of course, that'll be a chance for us to confirm that move. And then that means moving into the COVID protection framework. We don't expect Aucklanders to wait that long for confirmation of how the border will work or the date at which the border will reopen. We'll look to make decisions on that shortly, and I expect to give an update on the date for the border reopening next week.
So we'll get a date for the announcement of the date next week?
No, next week I'll give you a date that the border will reopen. Okay, Jane.
Can we have some clarity, please, on people self-isolating at home with COVID-19, with positive cases? So the website says there are about 290 at home, but then another 2,000 classified as other. Can you give some details about who they are, please? And do you have a clear picture of exactly who is where and what's happening with them?
Yes, we've got a very clear picture of who is where. So the number of people isolating at home includes cases. It also includes contacts, and some of those contacts are in the same households as cases. There is a group of people who are called other, who are people who have generally come to the end of their time in MIQ or in isolation quarantine at home, but the system just hasn't been updated to reflect that, and so the data is still pulled out automatically. And then, of course, there are people who are, there's a number of people who are in managed isolation quarantine facilities still, and then there are the people who are in hospital at the moment as well.
How long is it taking from the time someone finds out they have COVID until they either get into a quarantine hotel or get a plan for how to look after themselves at home? And is there increasing pressure, obviously, with the cases on the system, and is it going to need to be resourced up?
Yes, it's being resourced up, and there is definitely pressure there, but we are rapidly resourcing up and expanding that model to provide both that initial call to people about what to expect and to assess what their needs might be to help them to see if they can remain at home safely, and for the vast majority of people that is and will be the case, or whether they need additional support, health and or social support at home, and or whether a quarantine facility may be the best place for them.
This new system, are people waiting too long? Is that an efficient system at the moment, or are you hearing of problems with a lag in that communication?
My sense is most people are getting contacted very quickly, but there are some who are probably waiting longer than we would like, and we're moving to shift that first call to being one that is done sooner by a telehealth provider, but with the benefit of having clinical information that has already been gleaned from the clinical notes from people to determine whether or not they need a further clinical assessment.
Quickly on Northland, is there a baby in hospital with COVID in Whangarei, and are there 2 more unlinked cases in Kaikohe?
Yes, the person in hospital in Whangarei is a 6-week-old baby, and that was a case that had been announced over the weekend, so that baby, it was determined, required some care in hospital. And today, as the PM mentioned, there have been some cases that came in since 9 o'clock this morning. 2 of those are in Kaikohe. There is some link to people who travelled there from Auckland, but further interviews are underway. Those people are self-isolating, and interviews are underway to identify any close contacts. I should say that the most recent wastewater in Kaikohe was negative, and it's just determining the link probably to these people who they had contact with from Auckland.
Prime Minister, how long will restaurants in Auckland have to wait before they can open their doors?
Of course, as you will have seen in our new COVID protection framework, the whole goal with the new system is that regardless of what level we're at, there will be certainty for hospitality that they will be able to open throughout. And that is a key difference between what we are moving into in a highly vaccinated environment versus now.